This is Troy Valente. I'm the founding partner for Pistachio. Pistachio is an e-commerce system that we're developing. How I got to Pistachio is probably the best way to understand Pistachio. 18 years as a firefighter paramedic, a little bit of a stressful job. In fact, all first responders, very stressful job. What is accepted to deal with stress in that environment is alcohol, and is any kind of chemical pill. If you're in pain, you can take a Percocet. If you're depressed, you can take all the chemically engineered, and in my opinion, some very poor decisions in the first responder. Though cannabis is an obvious answer for me in the first responder, and the stresses of that, and it literally changed my life when I got on cannabis and got off the bottle. The problem is, if you're on cannabis in the first responder, you can't work there because we go on regular P tests. So I had been looking at the cannabis space for about 2 years, and the way I do business is I look for a deficit that we can fill with low competition to grab high market share. So I don't go into a space with an idea of like, I want to sell this widget in the cannabis space. It quickly became apparent to me that the cannabis space is 1990. And what the retail situation was in the United States of America in 1990, which was it was saturated. The brick and mortar was saturated. And then what happens? What's the process of any market that's set up? It's happening in the cannabis space right now. It's important if you're going to get into the cannabis space, you know the phase of the space. So what's the first phase? Brick and mortar, right? Well, what happens early on is a lot of people get on that bandwagon, and then what happens? It saturates. So brick and mortar is saturated in the cannabis space, and once you saturate, what happens? It contracts and it peels it off. That set up 1990s.com. Same exact thing happened, right? We're in that same phase right now. We are saturated at the brick and mortar, at least in the Colorado market. It is contracting, and the next obvious phase is e-commerce. COVID made it, I was onto the transfer issue and the banking issue about 1.5 years ago. COVID made it abundantly clear that the biggest problem in the cannabis space, from my perspective, is it's fragmented. So when we talk about building an e-commerce system, what are the important components for commerce? Money transfer, right? Stuff to buy, someplace for everyone to go, some fun, some incentive. On the business side, we have dramatic business 101 issues going on right now. You walk into the average dispensary, what percentage of is cash? 80 to 90%. Do you know what that costs a dispensary? 7%, maybe 5%. So it's costing the dispensary 5 to 7% right now to run their all cash business. So someone might say, oh, we'll just give them a money transfer app. That's already been done, and it's been unsuccessful because it's just one function. So we are a commerce system. Pistachio Cash, which is going to be powered by Plaid. Don't ask me anymore. I can't say anything for 5 weeks. But there's a new, we're going to be a handful of companies launching a new processor in the cannabis space. Pistachio Cash will be our money transfer service line as part of our commerce system. So when a consumer comes into the Pistachio app, they have everything in that app that they need to do cannabis. The other thing that was one of the biggest influencers of my brand as an entrepreneur was the 2006 book, The Walmart Effect. I got 2 things from that book. 3% of the US economy runs through Walmart in 2006. 3% of the US economy ran through Walmart. So I was like, well, let's study the Walmart system. And what is it? Why has Walmart been so successful? Cheap, blue, negative connotation? No. Everything, think of what you go to Walmart for. Everything household is in Walmart. Your groceries, your toiletries. You can get your eyes in there. You can go to Subway and get your hair cut. Right? Everything. It's a one-stop shop for household. So we did the same thing with Peak Impact Real Estate, which is my real estate company. We grabbed $150,000 in commissions in the first 9 months with the Walmart effect. When they come to Peak Impact, they can buy a house, they can sell a house. We can build a house, we can build townhomes, we can invest, we can do financial planning, we have a design team, right? So that is what Pistachio is. It's an e-commerce system. Everything consumer, everything business in the same portal. Pistachio Cash is a transfer line. Pistachio Lab, education is a huge part of my passion for the space. Never been on a cannabis-related death. I've nasally intubated countless Percocet overdoses. Alcohol is brutal because those college students are puking into their lungs. I've never been on a cannabis-related death. because it doesn't depress the respiratory drive. My worst cannabis overdose I ever ran was on a 3-year-old female who got into 40 milligrams of edibles in her mom. Guess how bad the call was? She laughed hysterically. She was so high. So high. That's my worst. That's a 3-year-old female, 40 milligrams. That's an intense dose. 0 change in her mentation. Maybe initially she was a little loopy and put a little oxygen on her, but once she got on that hump, she was just laughed for 3-4 hours in that surge. She had a great time.
And she was fine?
She was totally fine, absolutely fine. So, education, but I have been on countless bad experiences of cannabis. My last job I worked for, I retired, was in Park Health, and we have people that come from altitude. You know where I'm going with this. They drink no water, drink lots of alcohol, and they down edibles because they don't know how those work, and they're smoking, and then it all kicks in and they see me. They feel like they want to die, but respiratory depression is not the problem. It's usually a GI problem. So education, but not Leafly level education. Sorry, Leafly people, if you're watching. Your education is set for millennials. It's not set for the middle-aged female, which is our focus. That's not our focus group, but if we solve her, number 1, she'll enter the space. Number 2, I'll solve everything else. So we're gonna do 45-second videos on how to have a good experience. Get doctors talking about using cannabis with it's an anticholinergic. What that means in English is it raises your heart rate, raises your blood pressure, kind of brings things up a little bit, and then suppresses CNS. So we want to have doctors talking about using cannabis with cancer treatments, with high blood pressure, with cardiac dysrhythmias, like a whole nother level of education. We all come from the medical field. I traveled, I wrote a book for paramedics. I traveled with the biggest sales teams in the world on the medical manufacturing. So we know a lot of strategies that work really well, including how to do the education as part of a value for a business. And again, not one function, everything in one place. And then where we're going, Pistachio Dash. What are we on time?
You're fine.
Woo, we're doing good. So if you think that the idea is exciting, the team is even more exciting. There's me. Amber is my sister, best friend, partner, and also my real estate company. She is a monster when it comes to CFO. Sorry, you guys are awesome. I love you. Amber is everything CFO, but she also knows her weaknesses, so she contracts with people to help her do her job. So she's not an ego, she's fantastic. Michael Hull just quit I can now say it, he's one of the partners for Abram brands in Eugene, Oregon, one of the top advertising firms on the West Coast. Marketing is going to be a huge part of what we do, as well as our education piece and all the eye candy. He's a 2-time Emmy-nominated producer. He's just a monster in the marketing. And think marketing at the highest level you can. Brand engineering, where the brand is the same experience whether you're on the phone, the tablet, you're on the computer, you're in the Oregon Duck Stadium. His team did the Oregon Duck Stadium. So he's a monster. My wife, executive director, she's still in healthcare at the director level. She'll be everything processes, Mr. Riffle. So one thing I do as an entrepreneur when I want to do something cool is I work my entire sphere, not just the space I'm in, and that's how I met George. We were in a real estate deal. George has a long history. When my ears perked up is when he said, hey, I was on one of the first, in the 90s, one of the first online commerce portals, heavily involved in the inventory tracking side of that first portal. Well, that's slightly helpful for Pistachio. Plus his energy and his brain, amazing. When I traveled with a lot of the sales teams, one of the top pharmaceutical reps in the country that I ran into when I was with Medtronic, Mark Kane, one of the top Lilly reps, he was on the team that rolled out Cialis. And then Brennan is our resident millennial. And George brought us Brennan, and I'm so excited that millennials are going to code Pistachio, because I think it literally is the future of the space, and Brennan hires the newest coders coming out of the tech schools. So it's going to be super cool. Us old guys won't even get any say. We're growing the Pistachio Dash. So as far as the consumer experience, it's a Pistachio experience, but on the business side, it's scalable. They might need all the service lines, so we break it up into money transfer, and then the education, and Pistachio Dash will be our service line. When I was working the ambulance, and this is true all over the country, I've traveled from Florida to Hawaii, everywhere in between with all the sales teams, and this is consistent across the country. Whether you're in a county, you're in fire, you're in private, or you're in hospital base, Do you think 911 ambulance services make money? No. No, the best case scenario for an ambulance service is to break even. It's a specialized courier service, and we're charging $2,000 a transport, and we have a 60% collection rate. And we do systems, I mean, we've got it worked out. The problem with specialized courier service is you don't know when it's coming. So you have to kind of, you can't staff for the peak, or then you'll really lose money. But you have standards to keep as far as response times. You can't, so you're always trying to find this sweet spot in the 911 system. How does ambulance, the companies that make money, how do they do it? Interfacility transports. That's your money in courier service. Interfacility transport is predictable. It's prepaid. We have hours, potentially 2 to 3 days to respond to the request. So that is how you do it in the 911 systems. You make sure you have predictability in your business model, which is really hard to do in 911. How does that equate to what we're thinking for our delivery model? Is we're not going to do specialized courier service. We are going to do bi-weekly delivery of the milk, bread, and eggs. The 80%, the 101 of cannabis consumption. If you consume cannabis and you spend $200 a month, probably 120 to 150 of that is the same amount of money every month. Why can't we put that on a bi-weekly shipment? And then, because it benefits us and our business partners, we leave the other 20 to 30% of the market to encourage the support of brick and mortar. So that's the model that we're going with. We still need strategic partners. We are not about imperialism. We don't want to own the space. It's a very fragmented space. There's certain functions that exist and need to be put together, and that's where the perfect company. And if it doesn't exist, we'll code it. And if we need a bridge, we'll code that too. So we are a cooperative company. I'm still looking for inventory tracking. We're considering coding it ourselves, and it's expensive. And there are people out there that are already doing it, and we can come like this and API together. So inventory tracking is a huge one. And then investor. One thing I can do that most companies can't is I can cross-pollinate for an investor into my real estate space to reduce the risk profile. What in the actual hell did I just say? So if you give me $3 million, I'm gonna put $750,000 in the Pistachio account and try to launch a very risky company in an illegal space. 2.2 million of that's gonna go and build out our next build with 10 townhomes, give you ownership in that and make $15,000 a month within 6 to 8 months. So there's a lot of high level business that we're bringing into this space, whether it's talking about how we're designing it, how we're working together, how we're approaching investors. It's just a different perspective. What time is it?
5:01. 5 more minutes.
Man, you nailed it.
5:05.
5:01.
I get to keep going? Any questions? So that's who we are. We're Pistachio. We're super excited to be here. PistachioCC.com. You can email me there, or Troy@PistachioCC.com. Yeah, any questions?
What's a good prospective customer for you? Who's somebody we can send your way?
We don't have any competition, so we're going to dominate the whole market. So we're going to appeal to the consumers in the space because everything that I've explained is not there. And then we have targeted the middle-aged female as our highest standard of operations, because if we can pull them into the space, we'll hit everything else. So even how we design the brand is a balance of the psychology of the middle-aged female versus the existing. So.
Okay.
Spam.
Hey Troy, could you kind of talk a little bit about how it benefits to dispensaries? The B2B perspective.
Yeah, so the first thing the investor wants to ask me is, well, how are you going to sell this? Oh, you can't sell it. Here's how it goes. So I walk in, you're 80 to 90%, you don't know how much money you make, you can't run a report. I talked to a 15-year grower who's missing 30% of his product. So he's at 7%, I walk in and say for 2 to 3%, you get the whole Pistachio platform. You get everything. You get your money track, you get reports, you can pay your taxes. I'm going to pull consumers to the portal. We're bringing the consumer group. That's really what we're doing. We're engineering the consumer experience, but we have to shore up some business 101 in the process. So there's a huge business value. Not only the functions we can give the business, but our team, there is not a better team out there to help a business run a business in any space. So that would be value for the business.
Thank you.
When will we see you on Shark Tank?
I love to watch Shark Tank, but those guys are not my style. Gotta know who you are and who you aren't.
Yep. Very good. All right.
Thanks, guys and girls.
All right.